It was supposed to be just another Monday morning at Fort Carson. I had been juggling work and motherhood for years, and by now, I thought I had the routine nailed down. Get my son Liam ready for school, review a few logistics reports for my unit, grab a quick coffee, and move on with the day. That morning, though, things felt a little rushed. Liam had a big spelling test and was nervous, so I was trying to calm him down while throwing on my uniform. My sister Rachel was at the house, too, acting like she was doing me a favor. She said she'd help by packing Liam's lunch so I wouldn't have to stress before heading to base. Rachel had been hanging around more than usual lately. She liked to remind me that she was family, as if I could forget that fact. She was older by 3 years and carried herself like she was still in control of me, the way she was when we were kids. Except this time, I wasn't a kid anymore. I was a captain in the Army, handling supply lines and personnel at Fort Carson. I knew how to manage chaos, but Rachel had a way of slipping in, always trying to make herself useful, even when I didn't ask for it. That morning, she smiled and said, "Relax, Sarah. I've got Liam's lunch covered." I should have trusted my instincts. Years in the Army taught me to pick up on small details, shifts in tone, body language, hesitation. Rachel's tone was sweet, but something about the way she avoided eye contact when I thanked her stuck with me. Still, I let it slide. She handed me one lunchbox for Liam and another smaller one she claimed was for me. I didn't question it. After all, who second guesses their own sister over a lunchbox? Later at the base, I was buried in paperwork when I reached into my bag. Instead of pulling out my small container, I found Liam's lunchbox. For a second, I thought I'd just mix them up. It wasn't a big deal. I figured I'd take a quick peek inside, maybe laugh about it, and swap it back with him later. I popped open the lid, and right away, something was off. On the edge of the container, around the rim, there were these tiny white crystals. At first glance, they looked like sugar, which didn't make sense because the food inside was pasta with chicken. Sugar on chicken pasta? I chuckled and muttered to myself, "Nice one, Rachel. You seasoning with dessert now?" I showed it to a guy in my office, Sergeant John Carter, a safety officer who used to be a combat medic before retiring from a field duty. He was the kind of guy who had seen it all, patched people up under fire, and could tell the difference between harmless and deadly in a second. When I showed him the rim of Liam's lunchbox, expecting a laugh, his face drained of color. "Sarah," he said, his voice flat and urgent, "where did this food come from?" I was thrown off by his reaction. "My sister packed it this morning." "Why? Don't tell me it looks like mold already." He grabbed the container from my hands and studied it under the fluorescent light. He touched the rim lightly with his finger, rubbed it between his fingertips, then brought his hand close to his nose. That's when I knew something wasn't just weird. It was bad. His eyes met mine, hard and serious. "You need to get Liam to a hospital right now." I blinked. "What? Why?" "He's at school. What's going on?" John shook his head, his jaw tight. "I don't have time to explain, but if your boy ate from this, he could be in real danger. You've got to move." My stomach dropped. I'd heard him bark orders in training exercises before, but this wasn't training. This was pure fear in his voice, the kind that doesn't show up unless someone's life is on the line. "You're not joking," I pressed. "Sarah," he said firmly, gripping my arm, "do I look like I'm joking? Go. I'll call ahead and get toxicology ready at Memorial Hospital." I grabbed the lunchbox, shoved it back into my bag, and bolted. My heart was pounding as I called the school on the way out, telling them to keep Liam in the nurse's office until I arrived. My driver, who had been with our family for years, saw my face and didn't even ask questions when I told him to step on it. The ride to Memorial Hospital, Colorado Springs, was a blur of red lights and honking horns. I clutched that lunchbox like it was evidence from a crime scene. For all I knew, it was. I kept thinking about Liam sitting in his classroom, maybe taking a bite from whatever was inside. The thought nearly made me sick. When we got to the hospital, I rushed in with the container sealed in a plastic bag. The nurses looked at me like I was crazy when I said, "This food might be poisoned. I need it tested now." One of them started to hesitate until the phone on her desk rang. It was John. He'd already called ahead. Suddenly, things moved fast. The container was taken to the lab, and I was ushered into a waiting room. Sitting there felt like torture. I stared at the clock on the wall as if it was mocking me. Every second felt too long. My mind kept replaying the past few weeks. Liam complaining about stomach aches, saying he felt tired, looking pale sometimes. I'd brushed it off as stress from school, or maybe just a growth spurt. Now those memories hit me like a punch in the chest. A doctor finally walked in. Dr. Emily Parker, her name tag read. She had that steady look doctors get when they're trying not to alarm you. She sat down across from me, holding a sheet of paper. "Captain Bennett," she said, "we ran tests on the food. It contains arsenic. Based on the amount, if your son has been eating this regularly, he's showing signs of chronic poisoning." The words didn't even register at first. Arsenic? Like something out of an old crime novel. But her face was dead serious. My throat tightened, and I could barely get the words out. "Are you telling me my son's been poisoned?" She nodded. "The fatigue, the stomach pain, those are classic symptoms. If he's been eating lunches like this for weeks, we need to run tests on him immediately." I couldn't breathe. My son, my only child, the kid I'd raised alone while serving my country, might have been slowly poisoned right under my nose. I thought about who had prepared that lunchbox. Rachel, my sister, the woman who smiled in my kitchen that morning like nothing was wrong. I gripped the chair so tightly my knuckles turned white. The Army had trained me to handle emergencies, to stay calm under pressure, to make quick decisions in the combat zones. But nothing prepares you for this. Finding out someone might be trying to kill your son with his lunch. I pulled out my phone and sent Liam a message. "Stay in the nurse's office. Don't eat anything. I'm on my way." Then I looked at Dr. Parker and said, "Run every test you need. I don't care what it takes. Just make sure he's okay." As I left the room, my legs felt like they were made of concrete. I wasn't just a soldier anymore. I was a mother about to go to war for her child. And this time, the battlefield wasn't overseas. It was right inside my own family. The elevator door slid open, and I walked fast down the corridor toward the pediatric wing, my boots echoing against the tile floor. Every step felt heavier, like the air itself was weighing me down. The nurses had already moved Liam from school to the hospital for tests, and I needed to see him with my own eyes. When I stepped into the room, he was sitting on the bed in his school polo, looking small and confused, clutching his backpack like it was a life vest. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, his voice a mix of nerves and innocence. I forced a steady tone. "They just need to run some tests, bud. Nothing for you to worry about. Think of it as skipping math class for the day." He gave me a half smile, the kind a kid gives when they're not sure if they should believe you. A nurse slid a blood pressure cuff around his arm, and I moved to the corner, gripping my phone tight in my hand. Dr. Parker came in with a clipboard. "We've started blood work and urine samples," she said, speaking quietly but firmly. "If there's arsenic in his system, we'll find it." I nodded, not trusting my voice. My military brain wanted to treat this like an operation. Gather intel, analyze threats, execute a plan. But this wasn't a mission briefing. This was my son, and someone close to me was trying to kill him. While Liam sat for more tests, I paced in the hallway. I dialed Sergeant Carter. He picked up on the first ring. Tell me you got him checked. He's here. They're running labs, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. John, you look like you'd seen a ghost when you saw that food. What exactly did you recognize? There was a pause. Then his voice dropped. In Afghanistan, we had insurgents use arsenic on local water supplies. White. Residue around containers was a dead giveaway. I didn't want to scare the hell out of you at the office, but when I saw that rim, I knew. I swallowed hard. So, we're not talking about an accident. Someone deliberately put poison in my son's food. I'm afraid so, he said. Keep me posted. And Sarah, be careful who you trust. The call ended, and I stared at the sterile white walls of the hospital corridor. Who I could trust. Those words stuck. My circle was small. My unit, my kid and family. Except family wasn't looking too clean right now. An hour later, Dr. Parker returned with the lab results. She handed me a printout and explained in plain language, your son has elevated arsenic levels in his blood. Not enough to be fatal right now, but consistent with repeated low-dose exposure. The stomach cramps, fatigue, nausea, those weren't random. He's been ingesting this for weeks. I clenched the papers so tightly they crumpled. Is he going to be okay with treatment and by eliminating the source? Yes, she said. We'll monitor organ function closely, but his age works in his favor. The damage isn't permanent yet. I looked through the window at Liam, swinging his legs off the hospital bed, humming some video game tune like nothing was wrong. Relief mixed with fury in my chest. He was alive for now, but someone had been trying to make sure that wouldn't last. Back in the room, Liam glanced at me nervously. Am I sick, Mom? I sat on the edge of the bed and brushed his hair back. You've just been eating something that doesn't agree with you. The doctors are fixing it. He frowned. Was it the spaghetti Aunt Rachel made? It always tasted weird. The words hit me like a hammer. He remembered. He noticed, and I had ignored it because I wanted to believe that family meant safety. I kissed his forehead and said, Don't worry about that anymore. You're safe now. When he finally drifted off for a nap, I pulled out my phone again and scrolled through messages from Rachel. They were full of casual check-ins and fake cheer. How's my favorite nephew? Hope he liked lunch today. The audacity made my stomach turn. I stepped into the hall and called James Wilson, my attorney who'd handled my estate planning for years. When he picked up, I cut to the chase. James, pull up my will. I need to confirm something. He sounded puzzled. That's an odd request in the middle of the day. Did something happen? Just do it, I snapped, then softened. Please, James. It's urgent. He agreed to meet me later that evening. I hung up and pressed my back against the wall, sliding down until I was sitting on the cold floor. All the years I'd fought overseas, all the risks I'd taken, I'd always believed the enemy was out there, beyond the wire. I never thought I'd have to turn those instincts inward, inside my own bloodline. But the pattern was too clear. Liam's health problems, the residue in the lunchbox, and Rachel's sudden eagerness to play helpful aunt. It lined up like a sick puzzle. I went back into the room just as Liam stirred awake. He looked up at me with groggy eyes. Are we going home soon? Not just yet, I said, forcing a calm smile. We've got to stick around so the doctors can finish making sure you're okay. He sighed but nodded, trusting me completely. That trust was a weight on my shoulders, heavier than any rucksack I'd ever carried. When the nurse brought in a tray of bland hospital food, I stopped her and inspected it myself before letting Liam touch it. Old habits die hard, and after what I'd seen, I wasn't about to take chances. She raised an eyebrow, but I didn't care. Let people think I was paranoid. They weren't the ones staring down the possibility of their kid being poisoned at the dinner table. I sat with Liam as he ate, my mind racing ahead. I needed to know how far Rachel had planned this out, what her endgame was, and why she thought she could get away with it. And more than that, I needed to figure out how to catch her red-handed, because accusing her without proof would only blow up in my face. The Army had drilled it into me. Intelligence before action. Don't move until you know exactly what you're facing. My gut told me this wasn't just about resentment or jealousy. There was something more calculated at play. Money, control, legacy. I just had to connect the dots. As Liam finished eating and curled back under the blanket, I glanced at my phone again. Rachel had texted, "How's Liam? He seemed tired this morning." I didn't respond. Instead, I slid the phone into my pocket and sat back in the chair, my arms crossed, watching over my son. The pieces were coming together, and I could feel the storm building. I left Liam dozing under the thin hospital blanket and walked out into the cool evening air. The weight of the day sat heavy on my chest, but sitting still wasn't an option. I dialed Detective Michael Reed, an old contact from my early days at Fort Carson when he was still serving as a military police officer. If anyone understood both the civilian and military sides of an investigation, it was him. He answered on the second ring. "Captain Bennett, been a while. What's going on?" I didn't waste time. "Michael, I think someone's been poisoning my son. We've got lab tests showing arsenic in his system." There was a sharp pause on the line. Then his voice turned crisp. "That's not something you joke about. Where are you now? Memorial Hospital?" "He's stable for the moment, but this didn't come out of nowhere. The food tested positive, too." "Stay put," he said. "I'll come by." When Reed arrived, he still had that same no-nonsense presence I remembered. He wore plain clothes now, but the way he scanned the parking lot before approaching told me the cop instincts never left. He followed me back inside, and once we were in an empty consultation room, I laid it all out. The lunchbox, the residue, the test results, Liam's symptoms. Reed leaned forward, elbows on the table. Arsenic poisoning usually means one of two things: industrial accident or deliberate attempt. Based on what you're telling me, this looks deliberate. "Exactly," I said. "And the only person who's had consistent access to Liam's meals besides me is my sister Rachel." His brow furrowed. "What makes you suspect her?" I took a breath, steadying my voice. "She's been hanging around more, offering to help with lunches. Liam even mentioned her spaghetti always tasted off. On top of that, she's drowning in debt. Credit cards, personal loans. She's up to her ears." Reed scribbled notes in a small pad. "Debt creates motive, but motive alone isn't proof." I clenched my fists. "Then we find proof." He nodded slowly. "We'll need to establish opportunity, means, and intent. If Rachel's really behind this, she didn't just stumble into arsenic. That's not something you buy at the corner store. I'll put in a discreet request to see if her name pops up on any flagged purchases or online orders." I sat back, staring at the floor. "There's another piece. My will. If something happens to me, Liam inherits everything. But since he's a minor, his guardian would control it. Rachel is listed as his guardian if I'm gone." That got Reed's attention. "So if you die, she gets control of the money and your foundation until Liam comes of age." I nodded. "Every cent." He let out a low whistle. "That's more than just motive. That's a financial jackpot." I called James Wilson again and put him on speaker. Within minutes, he confirmed the details. "Yes, Sarah, your sister is listed as Liam's guardian if you pass away. And yes, that gives her control of assets until he's 18. That was set up years ago when Liam was a toddler. You said you wanted a family member as guardian rather than a stranger." I closed my eyes. That decision, made with good intentions, had just turned into the perfect incentive for Rachel to take me out of the picture. James's voice crackled over the speaker. "Do you want to revise the will? We can make immediate changes." I looked at Reed, then back at the phone. "Not yet." If she's behind this, making changes now could tip her off. I need her to think she's still in line to benefit. James hesitated, then agreed. Understood. But Sarah, this is dangerous ground. Be careful. After the call, Reed tapped his pen against the table. So, here's where we stand. You've got motive tied to debt and inheritance, opportunity because she's been preparing food, and preliminary evidence with the arsenic findings. What you don't have yet is hard proof linking her directly to administering the poison. I folded my arms. Then we set a trap. His eyes narrowed, but there was respect there too. That sounds like your army brain talking. Damn right it is, I said. If Rachel thinks she's playing chess, she needs to know she's sitting across from someone who's been trained to win under pressure. I want surveillance in my kitchen, hidden cameras, audio, the works. If she's poisoning food, I want it on record. Reed leaned back, considering. We can get authorization for a discreet setup. It won't be admissible in every courtroom, but it'll help build probable cause. Good, because right now my son's life depends on us catching her in the act. Later that night, when Liam was finally asleep and the monitors beeped quietly in his hospital room, I stepped into the hallway and stared out the window at the city lights. My reflection looked back at me, pale and drawn, the uniform collar sharp against my neck. I thought about all the missions I'd been on overseas, the briefings where we laid out enemy movement, supply chains, exit strategies. Now the war zone was my own kitchen, and the enemy was blood. I remembered being kids with Rachel fighting over who got the bigger slice of cake or who got to sit in the front seat. Back then, her jealousy was petty, even childish. But somewhere along the way, that jealousy had hardened into something lethal. And now, instead of slamming a door or shouting insults, she was sprinkling poison into my son's food. My phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Rachel. Hey sis, just checking in. How's Liam feeling? Want me to bring anything by tomorrow? I stared at the screen until my grip tightened. The nerve, the audacity. She wanted to bring more food into my house right after nearly killing my son. I typed back, forcing my hand to stay steady. He's resting. We'll talk tomorrow. No exclamation points, no warmth, just enough to keep her guessing, not enough to tip her off. When I slipped my phone back into my pocket, Reed appeared beside me. We'll set up the surveillance tomorrow. I'll bring the equipment. Don't confront her yet. Let her think she's safe. I nodded, still staring out at the city. She thinks she knows me, Michael, but she doesn't. She has no idea what I'm capable of when it comes to protecting Liam. Inside the room, Liam shifted in his sleep, murmuring something about a spelling test. I pushed off the wall, walked back inside, and stood over him, watching his chest rise and fall. Whatever it took, however long it took, I was going to stop this, not just for my son, but for the principle that no one, not even family, gets away with this kind of betrayal. The next morning, I unlocked the front door of my house with Reed walking right behind me, carrying a nondescript duffel bag. To anyone else, it looked like gym gear. To us, it was surveillance equipment. We moved quietly through the kitchen, the place that had always been the heart of my home, now treated like a potential crime scene. Reed laid everything out on the table. 2 button-sized cameras, an audio recorder that could pick up whispers, and a small device to monitor activity remotely. These are military-grade, simple, discreet, reliable. No one will suspect a thing, he explained. I nodded, my eyes scanning the room. Years of supply chain logistics had wired me to notice blind spots, corners, and lines of sight. There, I said, pointing to the shelf above the fridge. Angle one camera to cover the counter and another over the stove. He followed my directions without question. I helped thread the wires through tiny gaps and secure the cameras until they were practically invisible. If Rachel came near this kitchen with her usual bag of tricks, she wouldn't know we were watching. By the time Liam came home from the hospital later that day, everything was in place. He was tired but smiling, clutching a comic book the nurse had given him. "Can we just have cereal tonight?" he asked. "You got it," I said. I poured him a bowl myself, making sure nothing Rachel had touched was anywhere near him. He ate happily at the counter while I sat across, hiding the storm brewing in my chest. Later that evening, Rachel walked in without knocking, as if she owned the place. She carried grocery bags and wore that over-friendly smile that always looked rehearsed. "I thought I'd make dinner for everyone, my treat," she announced, holding up a bag of produce. I forced a neutral face. "That's nice of you." She busied herself at the stove, humming while chopping vegetables. Reed had wired the kitchen so I could monitor the footage on my phone discreetly. And though I was sitting right there, I wanted to see how bold she'd get when she thought I wasn't looking. I excused myself to the living room, pretending to take a call. The screen lit up with the camera feed. Clear as day, I watched Rachel glance over her shoulder, then slip her hand into her purse. She pulled out a small packet of white powder. My stomach turned. There it was, the proof. She tilted the packet ever so slightly and tapped the contents into the pot of soup simmering on the stove. She stirred quickly, her face composed when she turned back to slice more carrots. I gripped the phone so hard I thought it might crack. My first instinct was to storm in and rip the spoon out of her hand, but I forced myself to stay put. This wasn't about a confrontation. It was about building an airtight case. Reed's text buzzed on my screen. "Got it. Stay calm. We're recording." I typed back, "She's poisoning the soup. Liam almost ate that." "We'll pull samples before anyone touches it," he replied. "Keep playing along." I walked back into the kitchen, forcing my voice to sound casual. "Smells good in here." Rachel smiled sweetly, ladling soup into bowls. "Liam will love this. Comfort food always helps kids bounce back." I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and said, "I'm sure you're right." I took the bowl she offered and set it on the counter. "Let's wait for it to cool before eating." Liam wandered in, rubbing his eyes. "Smells awesome. Can I try it?" "Not yet, buddy," I said quickly. "Too hot. Let's let it sit." I ushered him back to the living room with his comic book while Rachel wasn't looking. When she wasn't paying attention, Reed slipped in through the side door like a ghost. He wore gloves and moved fast, ladling a sample of the soup into a sealed evidence bag. Then he was gone again before Rachel noticed. I sat across from her at the table, forcing small talk. She asked about the base, about the foundation, about anything that made her sound like the caring sister. All the while, the poisoned soup sat between us like a loaded gun. After she left that night, humming her way out the door, Reed returned with the evidence. "Lab will confirm, but we've got the footage and the sample. That's 2 solid pieces." I slumped into a chair, exhaustion hitting me like a freight train. "She didn't even hesitate, Michael. She just did it like she'd done it 100 times. He nodded grimly. "Which means she probably has. This wasn't a one-off. She's been at it for a while." I thought back to the weeks Liam had been complaining about stomach aches. How many meals had she tampered with? How many times had I brushed off his fatigue as school stress? The guilt pressed hard on my chest, but anger was stronger. "She's escalating," I said. "And if she thinks I'm planning to change the will, she'll double down." Reed leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Then we let her think she's winning. People like Rachel get sloppy when they believe they're ahead. That's when we nail her." I got up and started scrubbing the pot, even though it was already clean. My hands needed something to do, some way to burn off the fury. I want her caught red-handed. No loopholes, No excuses. Reed gave a short nod. You'll have it. We'll line everything up. Lab results, footage, your testimony, the doctor's reports. When this goes to court, she won't have a leg to stand on. That night, after Liam was tucked into bed, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the silent cameras. The house felt different now. Colder, even with my son asleep upstairs. My home, once the safest place I knew, had been turned into a hunting ground by someone who shared my blood. I thought about my deployments overseas, about villages we secured where mothers begged us to protect their children from threats lurking outside their homes. I never thought I'd be the one needing protection from my own child, not from strangers, but from my own sister. As the clock ticked past midnight, I forced myself to breathe steadily. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. And if Rachel thought she was the hunter in this game, she was about to find out she'd picked the wrong prey. The following day, I stood at the kitchen counter pouring coffee when Rachel breezed in like she owned the place. She carried herself with that fake cheer she always put on when she wanted something. Morning, sis. I thought I'd stop by and make breakfast for my favorite nephew, she chirped. I took a slow sip of coffee, buying time to lock down my expression. That's thoughtful, I said flatly. He's still upstairs getting dressed. She set her purse down on the table and immediately began pulling groceries out of the bag. Eggs, bread, juice. Nothing suspicious on the surface, but I knew better. I glanced at the hidden camera, light on my phone already rolling. As she cracked eggs into the pan, I leaned against the counter and said casually, James Wilson called me last night. We were talking about updating some paperwork for the foundation. Her whisk froze midair. It was subtle, but I caught it. Her smile stayed plastered on, but the pause gave her away. Oh, updating paperwork? What for? I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. Just thinking of shifting more of my assets directly into the Valor Home Foundation makes things easier for the board. Her jaw tightened for half a second before she forced a laugh. You and your causes, always giving things away. I like helping people, I replied, locking eyes with her, especially veterans' families. They deserve it. She stirred the eggs a little too aggressively, metal scraping hard against the pan. Sure, but you also have to think about Liam. He's your son. Shouldn't he come first? He does, I said firmly. That's why I make sure he's taken care of, but he'll be fine. The foundation needs stability, too. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. She slid a plate of eggs onto the counter, the fork clattering against the ceramic. You make it sound like money just falls out of the sky for you. Not everyone's so lucky. I sat down, resting my hand on the table. Luck has nothing to do with it. Discipline does. Work does. Responsibility does. Her eyes flashed for a second. That old jealousy she carried since childhood, the one that never quite left, was bubbling just under the surface. She covered it quickly with another brittle smile, but I'd already seen it. Liam came bounding down the stairs, breaking the tension with his usual chatter about school projects. Aunt Rachel, you made breakfast. Of course, sweetheart, she said sweetly, sliding a plate toward him. My heart squeezed as I watched him reach for the fork. I kept my voice light but firm. Not yet, bud. Let's wait for the toast. I popped slices of bread into the toaster myself, intercepting the moment. Rachel's hand twitched almost imperceptibly, as if she'd hoped he'd dive right in. The toaster popped, and I buttered the bread while Liam hummed a tune under his breath. The normalcy of it all was jarring, like a perfectly painted backdrop hiding a collapsing set. Rachel excused herself to the bathroom, leaving her purse on the chair. Reed, who had been monitoring from his car down the street, texted me, "Check the bag while she's out. Be fast." I moved quickly, heart pounding in my ears. I unzipped her purse just enough to peek inside. There it was again, a folded packet of fine white powder tucked under her wallet. My stomach turned. I zipped it back before she returned, slipping back into my chair like nothing happened. When she re-entered the room, she picked up her purse casually, but her eyes flicked over to Liam's untouched plate. "Not hungry, honey?" she asked. Liam shrugged. "I'll eat after school." I stood. "I'll drive him today," I said quickly. "I've got time." Her smile tightened, but she nodded. "Of course. I'll see you both later." As soon as we were outside, Liam skipped ahead toward the car. I caught Reed's eyes from across the street. He gave me a sharp nod. He had everything he needed: the packet, the footage, and the timing. The drive to school was quiet until Liam piped up. "Mom, why don't you ever eat Aunt Rachel's food? She keeps asking me about it." I gripped the wheel. "Because I'm watching my diet," I said smoothly. "And you don't have to eat it either if you don't like it." He tilted his head. "It does taste weird sometimes, like metal." The words cut straight through me. He had noticed, but he hadn't known how to explain it. I forced a smile into my voice. "Then don't eat it anymore, bud. Stick to what I make." At the base, I parked and pulled out my phone to check the footage again. The video clearly showed Rachel slipping the powder into the eggs when she thought I wasn't looking. It was undeniable. Reed called me. "She's cracking." The mention of moving assets rattled her. "She's going to push harder now." "Good," I said. "The more desperate she gets, the more careless she'll be." All that evening, back at the house, I sat across from Rachel again as she sipped wine like it was any other family night. She tried to talk about old memories, high school dances, family road trips, but I wasn't buying it. Every word out of her mouth felt rehearsed, like she was trying to lull me into forgetting what I already knew. I leaned back in my chair. Do you ever wonder what it would have been like if things were different? If you joined the army instead of me? Her smile faltered. "Me? Please. I don't take orders from anyone." "Exactly," I said, my tone sharp. "You always wanted control." She set down her glass with a little too much force, wine sloshing over the rim. "Maybe I just didn't like playing second fiddle my whole life." The silence that followed was thick. Liam, thankfully, had gone upstairs already. I let her words hang in the air, studying her. That bitterness wasn't new. It was the same venom she'd carried for years. Now it was just more literal. I stood gathering dishes. "Well, at least now we know who's really in control of this house," I said evenly. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't reply. She grabbed her purse and muttered something about leaving early. I watched from the window as she walked to her car, her shoulders stiff, her movements jerky. When the taillights disappeared down the street, I exhaled slowly. The psychological battle was shifting. She thought she was manipulating me with fake smiles and poisoned meals. But the truth was, every move she made was one step deeper into the trap. I locked the door, turned off the kitchen light, and climbed the stairs to check on Liam, who was already asleep, sprawled out with his comic book still open on his chest. Standing there, I made myself a silent promise. No matter how twisted this game became, I would not lose. Not to her. Not ever. The following morning, I sat at my desk at Fort Carson, going through supply chain reports when my phone buzzed with a message from Reed. "Need to meet. Got something." I excused myself under the pretense of checking inventory in the motor pool and drove out to the diner just off base, where he liked to hold low-key meetings. He was already there, nursing burnt coffee like he enjoyed punishing himself. He slid a flash drive across the table. "We pulled the footage from the camera in your kitchen. It's clean. Shows her sprinkling the powder when she thought you weren't looking. And she didn't just do it once, multiple times." I plugged the drive into my laptop right there in the booth, ignoring the waitress giving me side-eye for setting up shop during the lunch rush. The footage rolled and my stomach clenched. Rachel's movements were deliberate. She opened a little vial, tilted it just enough, tapped the rim, and stirred the food with a calm face. Not a hint of hesitation. Reed leaned in. We also had the lab-run test on those eggs you saved. High levels of arsenic. Lethal if taken consistently. She's escalating. I shut the laptop with a snap. So, it's not just suspicion anymore. It's hard evidence. He nodded. We're past speculation. But here's the thing. She's careful about timing. She only doses when she thinks you're distracted. That means she's aware you're watching her. She'll get sloppier, though. Pressure's working. My jaw tightened. Then we crank it up. That afternoon, I stopped by my attorney's office. He was an older man, steady and meticulous, the kind of person who didn't waste words. I asked him to come to my house later in the week to discuss revisions to my will. He raised an eyebrow but agreed. I didn't need the revisions. I needed the performance. Back home, I made sure Rachel overheard me talking on the phone about major changes to the Valor Home Foundation. She pretended to scroll her phone, but her posture gave her away. Her shoulders stiffened, and her glass of wine sat untouched for the first time since she poured it. The trap was tightening. 2 days later, my attorney arrived right on schedule. I invited him to the living room with the windows wide open. Rachel sat in the kitchen, pretending to flip through a magazine, but obviously listening in. I want to allocate a larger portion of my estate directly to the foundation, I said in a voice loud enough to carry. My son will still have security, but the bulk of my assets should go toward Valor Home projects. My attorney nodded, playing his part perfectly. That's certainly your right. I'll draft new language for the will. Once signed, it'll take effect immediately. From the corner of my eye, I saw Rachel freeze. Her hand hovered above the page of her magazine but didn't turn it. That one detail told me everything. She had heard every word. After the meeting, she tried to mask her reaction with fake enthusiasm. That's wonderful, Sarah. You've always been so generous. Liam must be proud of you. I smiled tightly. He is, and he deserves to grow up knowing what integrity looks like. The dig wasn't subtle. She flinched. That night, Reed came over with 2 officers from his task force. They checked the kitchen again, repositioned the cameras, and installed a new one inside the pantry facing the spice rack. If she slips anything in again, we'll see it crystal clear, he said. We didn't have to wait long. The next morning, I pretended to run late, leaving Rachel alone in the kitchen while I got Liam ready upstairs. The camera caught everything. Her pulling the same vial from her purse, pouring a measured amount into the orange juice, and swirling the glass with a spoon. When Liam came bounding downstairs, she slid the glass in front of him with a smile that made my skin crawl. I intercepted immediately. Hold up, buddy. Don't forget your vitamins. I swapped the juice with a water bottle from the fridge before he noticed. Rachel's smile twitched for just a fraction of a second. She recovered quickly, but the damage was done. Later, Reed called me from the lab. The juice sample tested double the concentration of arsenic compared to the eggs. She's panicking. She's accelerating. I felt my chest tighten, the kind of cold anger that comes from realizing someone you trusted is not just dangerous, but reckless. That evening, Rachel sat across from me at the dinner table like nothing was wrong. She asked Liam about his math test, laughed too loud at his jokes, and offered me more casserole. I watched every movement, every glance, knowing the cameras were catching it all. Halfway through, Liam excused himself to play video games upstairs. I set down my fork. Rachel, can I ask you something? She tilted her head, feigning innocence. Of course, Sarah. What's on your mind? What exactly do you think you're entitled to? Her smile froze. Excuse me? You heard me. You act like you've earned a seat at this table just by showing up. You think you're owed something because we share blood, but entitlement doesn't equal ownership." Her eyes darkened, but her voice stayed sugary. "I don't know what you're implying." I leaned in, keeping my voice even but sharp. "I'm not implying. I'm telling you, whatever fantasy you've built about running my life, my estate, or my foundation, it ends here." For the first time, the mask slipped. Her lips tightened into a thin line, and the warmth drained from her face. She didn't argue, didn't lash out. She just stood, collected her purse, and left without a word. Reed called me an hour later. His voice was grim but steady. "She's cracking wide open." That silence wasn't surrender. It was recalculating. "Expect her to move soon." I hung up and walked down the hall to check on Liam, asleep with his sneakers still on. I pulled the blanket over him and sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, my mind racing. The trap was nearly set. She thought she was closing in on her prize, but in reality, every move tightened the noose she had tied around her own neck. And all I had to do was keep playing along. That Friday night, Rachel walked into my house with the grocery bag hooked on her arm, like it was any other family evening. She called out, "I thought I'd treat everyone tonight. Homemade soup, my specialty." I stood at the counter, phone buzzing with Reed's message. "Stay calm, we're live on the feed." The cameras were hidden, the mic tested, the food samples ready to be collected afterward. Everything was in motion. Rachel set the bag down and began unpacking ingredients: vegetables, broth, herbs. But tucked carefully at the bottom was her signature move, the small glass vial she thought no one else had seen. My stomach turned just looking at it. She hummed while chopping carrots, acting like a normal sister making dinner for family. The performance was good, I'll give her that. But I'd seen the footage, the recordings, the quiet satisfaction when she thought no one was watching. Liam wandered in, grabbing a handful of crackers. "Aunt Rachel, are you really cooking soup? Last time you made it, it tasted funny." Her hand froze for just a second before she forced a laugh. "That's because your taste buds are too picky, champ. This time it'll be perfect." I caught his eye and shook my head slightly. He frowned, confused, but set the crackers down without a word. Smart kid. Dinner was served an hour later. Rachel ladled the soup into 3 bowls, placing Liam's in front of him first. As always, she added a piece of bread to the side and touched his shoulder gently, smiling like the picture of an attentive aunt. My throat tightened. Reed's words replayed in my head. "She'll escalate. Watch for it." I waited until Liam picked up his spoon. Then I casually reached for the bowl. "Mind if I try the first bite, just to make sure your aunt hasn't burned it?" Rachel chuckled, but her eyes darted quickly toward me, then the bowl, then back. "Of course. Go ahead." I took a sip, forcing myself not to gag. The bitterness wasn't subtle anymore. I set the spoon down, smiling thinly. "Not bad." Liam shrugged and pretended to keep eating, just a few half-hearted bites before pushing his bowl away. "I'm full, Mom. I had snacks earlier." Rachel's smile flickered. "Already? But I made it special for you." "He'll eat more later," I said firmly, collecting his bowl and setting it in the sink. My hands shook slightly, but I masked it by running water over the dishes. Behind me, I could feel Rachel's stare boring into my back. Later that night, Liam pulled me aside in his room. "Mom, why don't you trust Aunt Rachel's food? You never finish it, and you don't let me eat it." I knelt beside him. "Because sometimes people don't have our best interests at heart. You don't need to worry about the details right now. Just promise me you won't eat anything she gives you unless I say so." His eyes were wide, but he nodded. "Okay, Mom. I trust you." When he finally fell asleep, Rachel was still there, lounging on the couch with a glass of wine like she didn't have a care in the world. She glanced up. "He's asleep already." "Yes," I said. She swirled her glass, studying me. "You've been acting different lately. Suspicious. Almost like you don't appreciate all the effort I put in around here." I folded my arms. "Funny. I thought you liked helping family." Her smile curved, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I do, but sometimes I feel like you think I'm expendable. Like no matter what I do, it's never good enough for you." I held her stare. "If you want recognition, you'll have to earn it. Honestly, that's how the world works." Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. "Not everyone gets what they deserve." That was the closest thing to a confession I'd ever heard from her. She left shortly afterward, muttering something about needing an early night. I locked the door behind her and exhaled, hands trembling. Reed called within minutes. "The soup sample's already at the lab. I don't need to tell you it tasted wrong." "No, you don't," I muttered. The next morning, Reed met me outside the precinct. He handed me the test results. Concentration levels were nearly double the last batch. If Liam had kept eating that soup every night, he wouldn't have lasted another month. "She's rushing." My throat went dry. "She thinks I'm signing the new will soon. She's running out of time," he nodded. "And when people run out of time, they make mistakes. That's what we're counting on." That weekend, I invited Rachel over again. She arrived with her usual performance face on, smiling big and talking about some spa trip she wanted to take. She made dinner, pasta this time, and again the vial appeared. I didn't stop her. I needed more. During dinner, Liam played along like a champ, pretending to feel tired after a few bites. He rubbed his stomach and groaned. "I think I need to lie down." Rachel rushed to his side, fussing over him with a tone that sounded genuine to anyone who didn't know better. But I was watching her eyes. There was no panic there, just calculation. She was measuring the success of her plan. When Liam excused himself, I leaned back in my chair and asked, "How's the pasta? Taste good to you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Of course. Why wouldn't it?" "No reason. Just wondering if you like what you've made." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. She smiled finally, but it was thin, brittle. "I always make sure my family's well taken care of." My chest tightened, but I kept my tone even. "Good, because I do too. More than you realize." That night, Reed picked up the pasta sample. The test confirmed it. Arsenic again, stronger than before. Every dish was turning into a weapon. Every bite a gamble. I stood in the kitchen afterward, staring at the empty plates. The woman who shared my blood had sat at my table, fed my son poison, and smiled through it all. The danger wasn't hypothetical anymore. It wasn't just suspicion or bitterness or jealousy. It was lethal, sitting in front of me at every meal, and I knew the time for subtlety was running out. 2 nights later, Reed parked a nondescript sedan across from my house. He carried a folder thick with notes and a face that didn't waste time. "Sarah," he said quietly, "we've got enough evidence to arrest her already, but if you want a confession that nails her beyond appeal, we need something more dramatic." I closed the door behind him. "What do you have in mind?" He looked me square in the eye. "A staged medical emergency. We make her believe Liam's already paid the price. If she thinks she succeeded, she'll let her guard down. People brag when they think they've won." The thought of putting Liam through a stunt like that made my stomach churn. But I also knew he was tough. He had grown up with a mother in the army, used to discipline and responsibility. I told Reed, if he agrees, I'll do it. We sat Liam down at the dining table that night. I explained carefully, keeping my voice calm. "Honey, this is serious. We need to make your aunt believe she's hurt you so the police can stop her. It means pretending you're sick, even pretending you don't wake up. Can you do that?" His face paled. "Like in the movies?" "Yes, exactly like that," I said, holding his hand. "But you'll be safe the whole time. Doctors and officers will be right there. You'll just be acting." He bit his lip, then nodded. "If it helps you, Mom, I can do it." I hugged him so tightly I thought I might crush him. My son had more courage than some soldiers I'd led. The plan moved fast. Reed coordinated with a doctor at Evans Army Community Hospital, setting up a room with hidden cameras and monitors. The staff agreed to help. They'd seen enough real tragedies and were glad to help prevent another. The following evening, the stage was set. Dinner looked normal, but we all knew the script. Rachel came over, chipper and smug, carrying a pie she claimed she just had to bake. She cooked as if nothing were wrong, slipping the vial from her purse when she thought my back was turned. The camera caught it all. At the table, Liam picked at his food, then clutched his stomach. "Mom, I don't feel good," he whispered, collapsing against his plate. I jumped up, my heart hammering, even though I knew he was acting. "Liam, stay with me!" Rachel leapt from her chair, putting on a flawless performance of concern. Oh my God, what's wrong with him? He was fine a minute ago. Her voice trembled, but her eyes betrayed her. They were watching, measuring, calculating. I dialed the prearranged number, shouting into the phone, "My son's unconscious. He's not breathing." Within minutes, the paramedics arrived, 2 undercover officers in scrubs. They loaded Liam onto a stretcher, hooked to monitors that mimicked a flatline. Rachel tried to push past me. "I'm his aunt. I should come with him." I grabbed her arm. "No, I'm going. Stay here." Her hand trembled, but she didn't argue. That told me everything. At the hospital, Liam lay still on the bed, wires taped to his chest. Makeup paled his skin, and a monitor beeped steadily with a blank rhythm. I sat beside him, clutching his hand. He opened one eye just long enough to whisper, "Am I doing okay?" I kissed his forehead. "You're perfect. Don't move." Reed stood in the corner, arms folded. "When she gets here, keep it together. Let her think she's won. She'll show her true face." 40 minutes later, hurried footsteps echoed down the hall. Rachel stormed into the room, hair tousled, eyes glassy with crocodile tears. "Sarah, what happened? Is he—" I covered my face with trembling hands. "He didn't make it." Her body went slack for a split second, like relief had just washed through her veins. Then she threw herself onto the bed, crying into Liam's still arm. "No, not Liam!" she wailed, but the tone was hollow. Leaning close to his ear, she whispered words I wasn't meant to hear, but the microphone caught perfectly. "Finally, it's done." My blood went cold. She straightened quickly, realizing what slipped. "Sarah, I can't believe this. How could this happen?" I stared at her, my tears genuine, even though the death was fake. My son was alive, but hearing her celebrate his supposed end cut deeper than any wound I'd carried in combat. Reed gave me the smallest nod from the corner. "Stay calm. Keep her talking," I whispered. "Why him, Rachel? Why my boy?" She blinked, caught off guard, then scrambled for a lie. "I don't know what you mean. He was sick, wasn't he? He'd been weak for months." Her story crumbled under the weight of her own arrogance. She had whispered the truth already. The officers outside tightened their grip on the cuffs waiting in their hands. But Reed didn't signal yet. He wanted more. I leaned closer. "If this was about money, you could have asked me for help. If this was about recognition, you could have earned it. Why poison him? Why try to destroy your own family?" Her mask slipped again, just for a moment. She sneered, her voice low. Because you've had everything. The career, the respect, the son. And what did I get? Nothing. This was my way to even the score. The microphone caught every word. Reed finally gave the signal. Liam opened his eyes at that exact moment, sitting up abruptly. Rachel screamed and stumbled backward, her face draining white. You're supposed to be... This isn't possible! I stood, fury boiling through me. He's alive, Rachel, and you just confessed to everything. Reed and 2 officers stepped into the room, badges flashing. Rachel Bennett, you're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. She spun toward me, desperate. Sarah, you can't let them do this. We're sisters. I shook my head, my voice like steel. You stopped being my sister the moment you tried to kill my son. The cuffs clicked around her wrists. She struggled, cried, cursed, but there was no way out. Liam slid off the bed, clinging to my side. His small voice shook. Mom, she really wanted me gone. I pulled him close. But you're here. You're safe. That's what matters. Reed glanced at me. We got it all. The audio, the video, the confession. She's finished. As they dragged her from the room, Rachel twisted in the officer's grip, eyes wild. You'll regret this, Sarah. You'll regret it. I didn't answer. I held Liam tighter, staring at the door long after it slammed shut behind her. The trap had worked, but the damage, the betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. Liam was still clutching my arm when they pulled Rachel into the adjoining interrogation room. Through the one-way mirror, we could see her slumped in a chair, hair messy, wrists locked in handcuffs. For once, she didn't look composed or smug. She looked cornered. Reed stood next to me, arms crossed. She's going to fight, but she's cracked already. This is where the truth spills out. The doctor who had helped stage the fake death walked in with the clipboard, setting down the medical report on the table in front of Rachel. Your nephew survived, she said calmly, but we found something in his system. Arsenic. Do you want to explain how that ended up in his food? Rachel's head snapped up. That's ridiculous. I don't know anything about arsenic. Her voice was sharp, but her hands betrayed her, trembling so much the cuffs rattled against the table. Reed entered the room, his badge glinting under the fluorescent light. He sat down across from her, flipping open a folder thick with photos and lab reports. We have video of you sprinkling powder into meals. We have test results confirming arsenic. We have audio of you saying, and I quote, "Finally, it's done. You want to keep pretending? Go ahead, but the evidence doesn't lie." Rachel laughed nervously, a short, sharp sound that echoed too loudly. You twisted this. Sarah set me up. She always hated me. I felt Liam stiffen beside me, but I put my hand on his shoulder, grounding him. Reed didn't flinch. Sarah didn't put the poison in the food. You did. Sarah didn't whisper relief over her nephew's body. You did. Rachel's eyes darted toward the mirror, like she could feel me watching. For a moment, her mask slipped completely, and the raw anger on her face was uglier than anything I'd ever seen. She leaned forward, hissing through clenched teeth. You don't know what it's like to be the one left behind. She got the uniform, the medals, the respect. I got nothing but scraps. Nobody asked if I wanted to be part of the spotlight. Nobody cared that I was drowning, so I made my own way. Reed's voice was calm but razor sharp. By poisoning a child? Rachel's chest rose and fell fast, but she didn't answer. He slid a copy of the will across the table. We also know your motive. If Sarah dies, Liam inherits. If Liam dies first, you become the legal guardian and eventually the one in control. That was your plan, wasn't it? Her jaw worked furiously. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she muttered, almost to herself. She was going to sign it all away to charity. I couldn't let her. I wanted to storm in and scream at her, but I stayed still, nails digging into my palms. This was her confession. She didn't even realize how deep she was sinking. Reed leaned in. Say it clearly. You poisoned Sarah's son because you wanted control of her money and her foundation. That's the truth, isn't it? Rachel's breathing hitched. She slammed her cuffed hands on the table. Yes, fine. I did it. I was tired of living in her shadow, tired of being the nobody. I wanted what she had, and Liam was the obstacle. Happy now? The silence after those words was deafening. My heart pounded so loud I thought Liam might hear it. He turned to me, eyes wide and wet, whispering, She admitted it, Mom. She really did. Reed stood, signaling to the officers waiting outside. That's enough. Book her. 2 uniformed officers entered, hauling Rachel to her feet. She fought, kicking the chair backward. Her voice cracked as she shouted, Sarah, you think you've won, but you'll regret this. You've always regretted me. Her eyes met mine through the mirror as they dragged her out. I didn't look away. When the door slammed shut, Liam pressed into me, his small arms wrapping around my waist. Why would she hate you that much? I brushed his hair back, fighting the lump in my throat, because sometimes people can't handle their own jealousy. They think tearing others down will fill the hole in their life, but it never does. Reed turned toward us, his voice softer now. She's not getting out of this one. With the recordings, the lab results, and that confession, the DA will have her locked down. You did everything right, Sarah. I shook my head slowly. No, I just did what any mother would do. The weight of it hit me only then. The poison, the lies, the betrayal by my own sister. Years of shared history reduced to evidence bags and transcripts. I looked at Liam and knew the truth. This had changed us both forever. The rest of the night was a blur. Officers filed paperwork. The doctor removed Liam's fake monitors, and Reed walked us back to the car under the dim parking lot lights. Go home, he said. We'll handle the rest. On the drive, Liam stared out the window, quiet. When we pulled into the driveway, he finally asked, Does this mean we're safe now? I gripped the steering wheel. It means she can't hurt us anymore, but it also means we move forward. We don't live in fear. Inside, the house felt different, like the air itself had shifted. The kitchen, where Rachel had stood smiling while she stirred poison, was now evidence of her betrayal. The dining table, the glasses, the bowls, they weren't just furniture anymore. They were scars. I tucked Liam into bed, his comic books piled on the nightstand. He clutched my hand before drifting off. I'm glad you're my mom, he murmured, already half asleep. Those words carried me through the quiet of the house as I sat alone on the couch. Family was supposed to mean safety, loyalty, love. But that night, I understood something harsher. Family could also mean danger. And sometimes the deadliest threats didn't come from strangers. They came from the person sitting across from you at dinner. The morning after the arrest, the hospital felt calmer, like a storm had finally passed. Still, the hallway chatter of nurses and the echo of footsteps carried a weight I couldn't shake. Liam held my hand tightly as Reed led us into a small observation room next to the interrogation suite. He explained, The district attorney wants a clean, formal statement. We already have her confession, but this cements it. You don't have to watch, but I thought you might want to. I nodded. I'll watch. She tried to kill my son. I need to hear every word. Through the glass, Rachel sat with her lawyer, a public defender who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His tie was crooked, his folder thin. Across from her sat an assistant district attorney with a stack of files and Reed leaning against the wall. The ADA began simply, "Miss Bennett, do you understand you are being recorded and that your statement can and will be used in court?" Rachel crossed her arms, jaw tight. "Yeah, I understand." Her lawyer whispered something, but she waved him off. "Tell us in your own words," the ADA continued, "how arsenic ended up in your nephew's meals." Rachel laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "You want the truth? Fine. I researched it. Online forums, black market sellers. I bought it cash, started slipping it in a little at a time. At first, I thought I'd make it slow, just enough to make him sick, so it looked natural. Then when Sarah started talking about changing her will, I had to speed it up. Every word stabbed like a blade. I gripped Liam's shoulder, steadying both of us. The ADA pressed, "And your motive?" Rachel's lip curled. "Money, control, recognition. Call it whatever you want." Sarah was going to give everything away to some charity. She built a whole empire and was just going to toss it out like it meant nothing. I wasn't going to let her destroy what should have been mine, too. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't interrupt. Reed spoke up, calm but firm. "So, you admit you knowingly purchased arsenic and administered it to food your nephew ate, intending to cause his death?" Rachel's voice cracked, but she didn't back down. "Yes, I admit it. I wanted him out of the way. I wanted the life Sarah never let me have." The silence in the observation room was suffocating. Liam leaned into me, whispering, "She really said it, Mom. She really wanted me gone." I swallowed hard, pulling him closer. "And she'll never get near you again," the ADA concluded quickly, sliding the file across the table. "This is enough for multiple felony charges: attempted murder, possession of a controlled toxic substance, conspiracy. Will proceed immediately." Rachel finally broke then, slamming her cuffed fists on the table. "Sarah set me up. She's always been against me. This isn't fair." Reed's reply was ice cold. "You set yourself up the moment you opened that vial." The officers escorted her out, her protest echoing down the hall until the door slammed shut. I sank into a chair, head in my hands. Liam stood silently, his face pale but resolute. "She can't hurt us anymore, right?" "No, son," I said softly. "She can't." That afternoon, the media storm hit. Local channels ran headlines. "Army Captain Exposes Sister's Poison Plot." Reporters crowded the hospital entrance, trying to catch a glimpse of me and Liam. Reed advised we keep a low profile. "Let the story burn itself out. Focus on your son. We'll handle the circus." Back home, the house felt foreign. The kitchen table, once just a place for meals, had become a crime scene in my mind. I bagged the last of Rachel's things into a box. Her jacket she left on a chair, a scarf hanging on the coat rack, a stray perfume bottle in the bathroom. Each item reeked of betrayal. I set the box on the porch and told Reed to collect it as evidence. Liam wandered in, holding one of his comic books. "Mom, can we ever be normal again?" I knelt, meeting his eyes. "Normal might look different now, but yes, we'll be okay because we have each other." He nodded slowly, leaning against me. The next day, I met with my attorney downtown. The office smelled faintly of leather and old paper, grounding me. "We need to revise everything," I told him firmly. "The will, the foundation documents, the guardianship papers. My sister is never to be considered in any legal way. Not now, not ever." He nodded. "We'll file immediately. And Sarah, I'll testify personally about her arrest if it ever comes to probate court." Driving back, I passed the gates of Fort Carson, the flag whipping in the wind. For years, the Army had taught me about vigilance, strategy, sacrifice. None of that training had prepared me for this, but all of it had helped me survive it. That night, Liam and I ate takeout pizza at the coffee table. No homemade meals, no pretenses, just greasy boxes and soda cans. He looked at me and grinned. "This feels safer." I laughed, the sound surprising me. Maybe it is. But when he fell asleep on the couch, I sat in the dim glow of the lamp and let the raw truth sink in. My sister had tried to kill my son out of greed, out of envy, out of a darkness I would never fully understand. It wasn't just a family drama anymore. It was evidence, courtrooms, headlines, and consequences. And while the system would take it from here, the scars were ours to carry. I looked over at Liam's sleeping face and whispered, "You're safe, and you'll stay safe. That's a promise." The truth had torn our family apart, but it had also stripped everything bare. No illusions, no fake smiles, no second chances, only the truth. The courthouse was packed the morning Rachel's arraignment was scheduled. Reporters clogged the steps outside, microphones in hand, calling my name as if I were some celebrity instead of a soldier who'd just seen her family implode. I kept my head down, one hand on Liam's shoulder, the other clutching the folder Reed had given me with transcripts, lab reports, and video stills. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, sterile and unforgiving. Rachel sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her hair limp, her eyes darting everywhere but toward me. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of the smug confidence she always carried. The judge entered, gavel, striking wood. "We are here in the matter of the state versus Rachel Bennett, charged with attempted murder, possession of a controlled toxic substance, and conspiracy to commit murder." The words hung heavy in the air. Liam shifted nervously beside me, but I kept my hand steady on his back. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. The poisoned meals, the lab results, the surveillance, footage, the audio confession. Each piece landed like a hammer blow. The defense tried to argue stress, jealousy, even mental health struggles, but nothing could erase the evidence. At one point, the prosecutor played the video of Rachel slipping powder into Liam's orange juice. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. A reporter scribbled furiously. The judge's expression hardened. I looked at Liam, who stared at the screen with wide eyes. He whispered, "That's what she did every time." I nodded, throat tight. "Yes, and now everyone knows." When it was time for testimony, I took the stand. My uniform felt heavier than ever, but it gave me strength. I spoke clearly, recounting the nights Liam got sick, the moment I saw the vial, the staged hospital emergency. I described the fear, the betrayal, the realization that my own sister was trying to destroy my son's life for money and recognition. The defense attorney tried to rattle me. "Captain Bennett, isn't it true you and your sister had a strained relationship for years? That there was tension long before this?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "But tension doesn't explain poison in a child's meal. Only intent does." He had no response. Rachel finally took the stand herself. Her lawyer whispered urgently, but she waved him off. She stared straight ahead, voice shaking. "Sarah has always been the golden one. She got the Army career, the respect, the son everyone admired. I got left behind. Nobody cared what happened to me. Nobody ever noticed me. And yes, I was angry. Yes, I wanted more. But I never wanted to hurt Liam." The prosecutor pounced. "Then how do you explain the arsenic in his food? How do you explain your own words caught on tape saying, 'Finally, it's done'?" Rachel faltered. Her eyes filled with tears, but they looked rehearsed, hollow. I was angry. I didn't mean it like that." The courtroom wasn't buying it. Neither was the jury. When closing arguments wrapped, the judge announced the jury would deliberate. The next morning, court was adjourned, but the weight of it lingered. As people filed out, Rachel caught my eye for the first time. She mouthed words silently, but I understood them. You ruined me. Reed guided Liam and me outside through a side exit, away from the media frenzy. In the car, Liam sat quietly, staring at his hands. Mom, he said finally, is she still my family? The question cut deep. I took a long breath. By blood, yes, but family isn't just about blood. It's about love, loyalty, and protecting each other. She gave all that up. He nodded slowly, as if the words made sense, but the pain was still too raw to process. That night at home, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair where Rachel used to sit. The silence felt heavier than her presence ever did. The house was safe again, but it wasn't whole. It never would be. The next morning, we returned to court. Jury filed in, their expressions grim. The foreman stood reading the verdict aloud. On the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of possession of a controlled toxic substance, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge's gavel banged. Rachel slumped in her chair, face pale, eyes unfocused. The judge pronounced the sentence. Rachel Bennett, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole for the first 20 years. The sound of the gavel striking echoed like finality itself. Rachel's scream cut through the room. Sarah, you did this to me. You destroyed me. I stood slowly, my voice steady. No, Rachel, you destroyed yourself. Liam gripped my hand tightly as the officers dragged her away. Her cries echoed down the hallways until the heavy doors shut behind her. Walking out of that courthouse, the cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions, but none of it mattered. The fight was over. My son was alive. Justice had been served. Still, the cost was written all over Liam's face and in the hollow ache in my chest. We hadn't just lost a sister, an aunt. We'd lost a piece of family that could never be repaired. That evening, Liam and I sat on the porch as the sun set. The air was quiet, peaceful for the first time in months. He leaned against me, voice soft. Mom, do you think we'll ever forget this? I looked out at the horizon, the fading light casting long shadows across the yard. No, I said honestly. We won't forget, but we'll move forward because that's what we do. He nodded, resting his head on my shoulder. For the first time, I felt a fragile kind of peace settle in. Not joy, not celebration, but the beginning of healing. The family we had left was smaller now, but it was stronger, and nothing, no jealousy, no betrayal, no revenge, would ever take that from us again. Weeks after the sentencing, the dust finally began to settle. The headlines moved on to other scandals. The reporters stopped camping outside our house, and the world seemed ready to forget. But for Liam and me, the echoes lingered in every quiet moment. One morning, I woke up before sunrise, the old army habit never leaving me. I brewed coffee and stood at the window, watching the first light stretch across the yard. The house was still, but no longer suffocating. For the first time in months, I could take a full breath without waiting for the next blow. Liam shuffled into the kitchen, hair messy, clutching his backpack. Mom, can you sign this permission slip? Field trip next week. His voice was casual, but the fact that he was talking about school trips and friends instead of hospitals and poison was enough to make my chest ache with relief. Of course, I said, scribbling my signature. What's the trip? The Colorado Springs Pioneers Museum, he said with a grin. I told everyone my mom was in the Army. They thought it was awesome. I laughed, ruffling his hair. Don't make me sound cooler than I am. But deep down, I was proud, not just because of my career, but because my son could still smile after everything. Later that day, Reed stopped by with paperwork. The DA wanted me to drop these off. Victim impact statement, final reports, all the red tape that comes with closing a case. He looked around the house, nodding at the fresh paint on the kitchen walls. Looks different. It needed to, I said. I couldn't stand looking at the same place where she tried to kill us. He gave me a long look. You did well, Sarah. Most people crack under that kind of betrayal. You didn't. I almost did, I admitted quietly. But I had Liam. That was enough. Reed tucked the folder under his arm. The Army's got your back, too. You know that, right? I do, I said, and I meant it. A week later, I stood at a podium at a Valor Home Foundation event. The room was filled with veterans, families, and donors. I adjusted the microphone and looked out at the faces before me. When I founded this organization, I began, I thought about sacrifice, service, and how to make sure no soldier or their family was left behind. What I didn't expect was how much my own family would test that mission. In the last year, my son and I faced a betrayal that nearly cost us everything, but we survived. And because we survived, I'm more committed than ever to helping others do the same. Applause filled the room. Liam sat in the front row, beaming at me. And for a moment, all the scars felt like proof of resilience instead of reminders of pain. After the event, a donor approached me. Captain Bennett, your story, it's almost unbelievable. How did you keep going? I smiled faintly. Discipline, stubbornness, and a little humor when nothing else worked. He chuckled. Well, whatever you did, it worked. Driving home that night, Liam leaned against the window, tired but happy. Mom, I think we're stronger now. I glanced at him. We are. Sometimes life breaks things apart, but that just makes room to rebuild stronger. The weeks rolled into months. School projects, baseball games, foundation fundraisers. Slowly, normal life reclaimed its place, but traces of the past lingered. Sometimes Liam would wake from nightmares calling my name. Sometimes I'd catch myself scanning every room like I was still on deployment. But healing wasn't about erasing the scars. It was about living with them. One afternoon, I found Liam on the porch with his comic book spread out. He looked up and asked, Mom, do you think Aunt Rachel will ever change? I sat beside him. I don't know. Some people do, some don't. But it's not our job to fix her. Our job is to live our lives, do good, and protect what matters. He nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do. We sat in silence for a while, the sun dipping lower. For the first time,